Hi, and welcome to EastTennesseeSports.com weekly podcast. You're here with Ryne Chambers.
And I'm Alice Mitchell.
And we're here to talk to you today about free agency in the NFL. Has it helped or has it hurt? And this offseason has certainly proven to be one of the craziest offseasons in terms of free agency, with one of the strongest free agent classes in recent NFL memory.
Absolutely. We could start right off the top with Wes Welker going to the Denver Broncos. We had Ed Reed ended up going to the Texans. We just heard come out recently that Urlacher is going to be leaving the Bears, so he's out there in free agency. So it's had free agency has had a tremendous impact in the last several years, and in this year in particular.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's just it's like people that we never thought we'd hear leave those teams, like Urlacher leaving the Bears, or I never thought that you could separate Tom Brady and Wes Welker. But really, but it's stuff like this that makes free agency so great. It creates this news, for the offseason. I mean, we were talking about it earlier before we started recording. How it used to just be you just reported on the games, and now with free agency and the big names going half across the country, or right next door to the rival, it creates these headlines, and it just keeps the sport alive in the off season, which is one of the things that I really appreciate about the existence of free agency in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely it does that, and especially also with combine and the draft and things like that. Free agency does do that. But I also have a feeling like there are some negatives with it as well. I mean, think about if you spent the last several years developing a particular player, and then after developing him and making him into a quality receiver or a quality running back, he turns around and leaves after 3 or 4 years and goes to play for a rival team because now he is worth more money to them. And you're under your salary cap, and you therefore cannot offer them the same kind of money that he may get with another team.
Right, but you got to look at it on the side of the team that's receiving the player. I mean, because of free agency, guys can only sign contracts for 3 or 4 years at a time. Right. So teams can just turn it around whenever. Nobody is guaranteed, a spot on that team for their entire career, and you can rebuild your team at any time. For example, the New Orleans Saints went 3-13 during the Hurricane Katrina season. They get they trade Phillip Rivers to the Chargers for Drew Brees, and then bam, you come back and he's the most held quarterback in Saints history, I would say, and they go 10-6 the next season and go to the NFC Championship game,
which is absolutely phenomenal to see something like that. But what we're losing also as well, I feel like, is those old school rivalries. Yeah, nowadays, you get the Steelers and the Ravens and teams like that, but you don't have those old school like Redskins, Cowboys, and teams like that, or Steelers and Steelers and pretty much anybody in the 70s. But you don't have that same type of rivalry nowadays, especially because you can't keep the same players. Think about 20 to 30% of clubs' rosters are turned over every year. They lose key and essential players. Yes, the Ravens just won the Super Bowl. Their team was picked apart during free agency, and therefore the chance of them having back-to-back championships, not going to happen. Slim to nil nowadays. We don't have those dynasties that we once had.
Right, but the game's also a lot more dangerous today, than it was back then. I mean, back then you didn't have guys hitting the weight room every day since they were, 12 years old, ever since they hit puberty, becoming these, football athletic machines. You're going around, flying around out there and, busting people's heads open and, all kinds of concussions. That's the big deal right now. I mean, heck, the average, player in the NFL, his career is only 3.5 years long when you do the math on it. And, I don't know how many players actually play for 3.5 years, but that's not a very long time. And with free agency, being 3 to 4 years, you're at least guaranteeing that guy, out of college or whatever, that he's going to have a job for 3 or 4 years, which is, especially, in today's market, at least he's got that.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's got that contract.
But then we also have to look at free agency and some of the downsides of these huge contracts that often demotivate a lot of these players. I mean, think of people that had these original contracts and then they went into free agency and turned into absolute busts. Right off the top of my head, Albert Haynesworth went to the Redskins, $100 million contract. He turned into an absolute complete waste of money. TJ Hushmanzada, completely overrated, when he left the Bengals, did absolutely nothing. Javon Walker, I don't even know where he is anymore. Adam Archuleta, after he left the Patriots, nothing out of him. So I mean, you have players that happens like that in this in the NFL nowadays with free agency. You're going to have people that get these bloated contracts and pretty much turn into nothing once they get out there on the market.
All right, well, yeah, you mentioned Albert Haynesworth. So there's a guy that he couldn't pass his conditioning test. All right, he's had a history of just having a horrible attitude in the NFL. If you remember that play where he stepped on that guy's head when he played for the Titans, I mean, somebody had to sell Albert Haynesworth to the Redskins, right? I mean, yeah, he's productive, but when a guy comes with that much baggage, is he really even worth it? And that kind of leads me into thinking we're talking about the players and the owners in the situation, but free agency these days anyway, a lot of it revolves around the agent themselves. Especially with like the Doomerville case and the Wes Welker case, there was miscommunication between Welker's agents and the Patriots. All right, so right now we're gonna listen to a clip from Drew Rosenhaus. He's a very outspoken NFL agent who represents all kinds of big names, and he's always in the news every season. He represents guys from Dez Bryant, Plaxico Burress, Frank Gore, Deshaun Jackson. So let's hear what he has to say about how he treats his players, his clients, during their free agency.
The guys have waited for 4 years who are free agents, in some cases 5 years and 6 years. And, I just won't take any deal because the guy wants to get, to camp on time. I mean, we're going to approach this the same way, and we're going to make sure that we get a fair deal.
So from what Rosenhaus is saying, it sounds like it's his decision what's in the best interest of his client. I guess if the client trusts him, handle his assets, I don't know. I don't think the agent's role really encompasses all of that. If a guy wants to play for a team and he wants to go, practice and wants to go make his team better, I think he should be allowed to. But it's looking like, today that may not be the case. It's just, I don't know if it's greed or what, but the agents are just kind of taking over.
For their players, absolutely.
Exactly.
And with the 10-year collective bargaining agreement in place, that pretty much is going to be the foreseeable future for the NFL, that agents will have this significant role in free agency now, and they will do more of the speaking for their players, like in the case of Doomerville and Wes Welker and things like that.
So you'll have to join us next week for our new topic of discussion, the rogue agent. All right, you have been listening to East Tennessee's Sports.com weekly podcast. I'm Ryan Chambers.
I'm Alice Mitchell.
Signing off and saying go Vols and good night.